Well, it all comes down to this. In a game which will determine both nations' World Cup lives, the U.S. men's national team take on Iran in the final game of Group B for both teams. For the U.S., it is simple. Win and you go through. No other result will work for our team. Now, on the field, it may be simple, but off the field, it has gotten extremely complicated. If you've been following over the last few months, Iranian politics have been absolutely exploding. And of course, that was going to find itself in the World Cup in some form or fashion. And it absolutely has. There was a bombshell explosive press conference today with Tyler Adams and Greg Berhalter, all ahead of the game tomorrow, with a lot of reports about things happening for the Iranian players. It is going to be absolutely wild, and we're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of the Yank Report. What's up? My name is Sam. This is the Yank Report, a show about all things American soccer. If you're into that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We'd be happy to have you as a member. If you want to support the channel directly, you can hit the join button at the bottom. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. But before we do, let's hear a word from this week's sponsor. Football is back, and BetOnline remains your number one source for all your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And as your continued source for all wagering info, BetOnline features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. Bet online, where the game starts. All right, and we bring in producer Brad. Brad, how are you doing on this eve of the biggest game in U.S. soccer history this year?
I am doing okay. I've been refreshing Twitter, seeing everything that's come out from press conferences and beat reporters on the ground there. It's been nothing short of interesting, but I'm excited to talk about everything and then hopefully talk about a little bit of ball as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, I really want to dive into the soccer right away, but I feel like we'd be remiss if we didn't explain some of the context going on around what's happening in this game. Now, of course, we're not experts on Iranian politics or geopolitics or anything like that. We're not experts in much at all. But what we do know is what's happened in the World Cup recently, and that is U.S. Soccer published a graphic that contained the Iranian flag, but did not have the emblem of the current regime governing the Iranian government. That created an international incident of sorts that ultimately led to today's press conference being bombarded and kind of overshadowed by Tyler Adams and Greg Berhalter receiving a ton of politically charged and really just charged up questions where it really felt like the Iranian press was trying to goad both Tyler and Berhalter into saying something that could become a bigger issue. And I think I have a graphic from Leander Shalakins here where he kind of talks a little bit about it. Greg Berhalter and Tyler Adams have now been asked about systemic racism in the U.S., the American fleet in the Persian Gulf, high inflation, and why Iranians need a visa to visit the U.S., but Americans don't need one for Iran. So I mean, this is a lot to take in. I mean, we've heard a lot about what's going on in Iran coming into this game. We knew that in the first game, there was a lot of pressure on the Iranian team. And we saw that they didn't sing the national anthem, which was seen as a protest against the government. And that's in the second game, they did sing the anthem. And it seems like there's a lot going on heading into this game that is outside of soccer.
it does. And we aren't experts on geopolitics. The only geopolitics we know about, excuse the pun, are the politics between Gio Reyna and Greg Berhalter. Thank you. I'll be here all week. But no, I think, and we were talking about this before we came on air, that press conference, I'm happy that they sent up who they sent up. And yeah, it's you sent up two dudes with the temperaments that they had, who weren't gonna make light of the situation, but also weren't going to, you know, say anything too extreme.
Yeah,
I think
and let's get into it because in the midst of this press conference, which was kind of a hit job and an absolute zoo of a press conference, we got one of the more poignant moments from an athlete, a statement from an athlete that I've heard, especially not a prepared statement, something off the cuff. And it was Tyler Adams. And I have the statement right here and we'll go through it. The reporter says, first of all, you say you support the Iranian people, but you're pronouncing the country's name wrong, which I've done also. Just as an aside, it's difficult because grew up saying it one way, but we're learning to say it the other way. Our country is named Iran, not Iran. Please, once and for all, let's get this clear. Second of all, are you okay to be representing a country that has as much discrimination against Black people in its own borders? And we saw the Black Lives Matter movement over the past few years. Are you okay representing the U.S. while there is so much discrimination against Black people in America? Which, if someone asked me that question in a press conference, I would probably not know what to say. But Tyler Adams, in the face of all that, in the face of what had been going on in that press conference over the past few minutes, was able to say this. He says, "My apologies on the mispronunciation of your country. That being said, there's discrimination everywhere you go. You know, one thing I've learned, especially from living abroad in the past years and having to fit into different cultures and kind of assimilate into different cultures, is that in the US, we're continuing to make progress every day. Growing up for me, I grew up in a white family with obviously an African-American heritage and background as well. So I had a little bit of a different cultures, and I was very, very easily able to assimilate into different cultures. Not everyone has that ease and ability to do that. And obviously it takes longer for some to understand. Through education, I think it's super important. Like you just educated me now on the pronunciation of your country. So yeah, it's a process, I think. And as long as you see progress, that's the most important thing. Which, I mean, this is a 23-year-old athlete that, in the face of an antagonistic reporter in a hostile environment, was able to not only lose his cool, but maintain his poise and say a statement like that. I mean, what can you say about Tyler Adams that we haven't
so.
already?
So a few years ago in 2020, Tyler Adams was 20 years old and had just scored for Leipzig to send them to the round of 4 in the Champions League. If I'm remembering correctly, I'm sure someone in the chat will correct me if I'm wrong there. But we had him on the channel I was working for at the time, and the president of our network comes down during the interview and listens to him and goes, "How old is this guy?" I was like, "He's 20." He goes, "No way. No way. This kid sounds like a vet." And we interviewed college football players all the time, young athletes all the time. No one, I can say with impunity, no one spoke with the grace of Tyler Adams. And I knew then and there he was a special guy. I did not know he was this special. I mean, he handled that like nobody, I think, nobody else on this team, in the very least, could have handled it.
He handled those questions better than Berhalter did.
Absolutely. You could see Greg was rolling his eyes every now and again, and Tyler was cool hand Luke out there, man. I mean, and it just it makes me excited for the trajectory of the program, because I know the captaincy is in safe hands for at least the next 8 years.
Yeah,
and there will be leadership on and off the pitch, and that's just something that's very, very good to see. I mean, I don't know if we have ever seen someone come in, and I'm thinking of other sports as well, where I don't know if I've seen someone come in and command respect and be as respected and respectful as well as Tyler Adams. I'm trying to think, maybe, I mean, even shout out to Akron, Ohio, where I'm from. LeBron had his growing pains right around the time he turned 23. I mean, Tyler is just as cool as you like.
And the pressure of the situation as well. I mean, dealing with the explosive politics of a nation that isn't your own, that you want to have the respect for the people, but also understand the gravity of the moment. Incredible. Robin Banks says, nice dodge. He he have more potential to be a diplomat than an athlete? And I was thinking, like, is this dude going to be the president of the United States at some point? Now, the only other thing I want to touch on from the press conference, because we do really want to talk about soccer, is this, and it's Natasha Bertrand, who is a CNN reporter. She says the family of Iran's World Cup soccer team have been threatened with imprisonment and torture if the players fail to, quote, behave ahead of the match against the USA on Tuesday. A source involved in the security of the games tells Kylie CNN. And I bring this up only because I'm very familiar with the story of USA versus Colombia in 1994. And if you're aware of that game, Colombia was one of the favorites of in 1994. They were one of the better national teams in the world, but they came into that World Cup on the heels of the height of the Pablo Escobar Medellin cartel, just the wars that were going on in that country at that time. And there was reports of players having their families threatened and extracurricular things going on and people having influence in that team that affected the way that the players played. And I wonder if we're going to see any of that on the field whenever Iran takes the field. Some of the players have already spoken out against this government and have been forced to kind of step back in line. So it's a fascinating thing that we're going to see throughout that might manifest itself on the field, because at the end of the day, while these are world-class professional athletes, I mean, they're human after all.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I just, that's a situation that I'm grateful I'll never have to be in, and athletes that have been around have never had to be in. But you can kind of see the pressure, I would assume, because first game they didn't sing the national anthem. Second game they did. I don't know if that was pre-planned or not, but speaking for myself, it would definitely affect the way I played. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I don't know how it wouldn't affect anyone. I mean, if your family is potentially in harm's way based on your actions in a game, that's going to impact you. Now, let's put a bow in that. If you want to learn more about this situation, there's plenty of better resources out there for it. Tifo Football did a really good video breaking down why the Iranian players did not sing the national anthem in the first game, and why they might do so in the future, and sort of all the events that have gone on, which there is a lot. There is a lot happening for that national team and in that country right now. But through it all, there's a game that's going to be played at 1 o'clock Central Time tomorrow that is going to determine the World Cup futures of both of these nations. And it is hugely important for Greg Berhalter and for this U.S. men's national team. This is something that these players have looked forward to their entire lives. They've had this circle. This is their moment. They are the quote-unquote golden generation. They are the ones who are supposed to change the way the world views American soccer. And a lot of that is going to be determined by this game tomorrow. For Iran, this is a country that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that they've ever been to the knockout rounds of the World Cup. And with their country going through a public, very kind of global political incident at the moment, this is an opportunity for them to continue putting their people in the limelight. And it seems like an incredibly pressurized situation. So we've got a lot going on in this game. Now, just to give you guys, I'm sure everybody already knows this, but for the U.S., we need 3 points. It's 3 points or bust. For Iran, they can go through with a tie or a win. So they are already incentivized to play a little bit defensively, which is already how they set up anyway. For the U.S., if you win, you will most likely come out the group in second place. There is a scenario where if Wales beats England and the U.S. beats Iran by enough goals, I think it's like 5 goals, we can potentially come out on top in the group, but it's very unlikely. So let's start with, how do you see this game playing out, Brad?
So I was talking about this with someone else earlier. We'll get to our predictions later. I think the U.S. jumps out early, and I think Iran will get one early in the second half, and then the U.S. will get one back towards the end, because I think this game is going to have to open up at some point, and I think we're definitely going to be able to hit them in transition. I don't think they're going to set up in a total low block. We saw them do that against England, and England just absolutely picked them apart. I think it's really going to have to come down to, are we going to come out and sit back and kind of let the game settle down, or are we going to come out on the front foot all gas? So I don't know. What do you think?
Wait, I want to make a correction because Mike Irish is totally right here. If we win and England loses, and we are in first. Yeah, that makes sense because they would have 4 points and we would have 5 points, so we would be in first. I'm conflating things right now. Apparently, I think if England ties and we win, then we would be level. Yeah, we would both have 5
level on points, but it depend on goal differential.
That's where it would come down to goal differential. Yeah. So I'm wrong there. If Wales pulls off the upset, which is possible, and beats England, then with a win, we can potentially be first in our group, which is very interesting considering what's happening in Group A right now. But let's not get ahead of ourselves there. Now, for this game, I think throughout the World Cup, Greg Berhalter has maintained the same lineup, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't maintain majority of this lineup. Who do you see as would you think that the back line is going to be the same from game to game with
I definitely think the back line was, I mean, everybody was harping on the center backs. Oh gosh, what are we going to do? They've been fine. And Tim Ream has been a shining bright spot for us. So you don't change that back line. I think if Iran really tries to make things compact, especially if in the middle, and tries to suffocate our mid block, but our midfield, I don't think they can. But if they do, it's going to come down to being able to get wide and attack the wings. And if you want to do that, I think you have no better options. You would be hard pressed to find better options in the world than Anthony Robinson and Serginho Dest. I think those are two guys who love to get forward and have also proven that in their ability to get back. So I really think that is something. If we can get good service from those two guys, I think that could go a long way to us having a lot of success in this game.
Now, XLRA Sean brings up a point that I'm seeing in a lot of U.S. men's national team circles, where he says CCV should start over Zimmerman. Zimmerman has not had a good tournament. For as good as he's been throughout World Cup qualifying for this national team, he, of course, gives up the major mistake against Wales, although he had a fairly solid game outside of that. The England game, his distribution was not good. It was not good. He had some big defensive moments, particularly earlier in the game, whenever he stopped a Harry Kane shot that was probably going to be on target and potentially could have been the go-ahead goal for England. So that was a big moment defensively for him. But his distribution out of the back was just not good. That being said, considering the options that the U.S. has on the bench, I mean, there's no shot that Zimmerman's coming out, right? He's going to play through this, whatever's happening with him, right?
I think so. I think you could see towards the end of the England game, they were trying to force the U.S. to go to Zimmerman instead of Ream to try and build out of the back. And of course, he made that mistake. But I'm hoping for a little poetic justice here. I'm hoping for Walker Zimmerman to get on the end of a set piece and redeem himself for a goal. But that being said, his distribution has been shaky, but I think his defense has been fine. So I don't think you take him out. Yeah, and I don't think you want to rock the boat right now. I think you got a back line who has not given up a goal from the run of play. Yeah, you stick with you dance with the one that brung you.
And I think that's worth pointing out because coming into this tournament, we knew center back was going to be this huge weakness for us. Through two games against some quality opposition, especially England, the U.S. has not given up a goal in open play. We haven't given up many shots in open play. We haven't given up many very good shots in open play. England had some from distance, but there was not a lot threatening Matt Turner in the England game or in the Wales game. Tim Ream has been immense in this tournament.
Unbelievable.
And it's not just defensively. I think the part that is really blowing my mind for this back line has been their ability to play out a press. Now, we didn't really get high pressed against Wales or England, But both teams kind of sat back in a mid block and said, okay, USA, break us down. We know that this is not your strong suit. And we have been able to get by the first line of defense against oppositions super reliably. A lot of that comes down to the play of Tim Ream, who has just been a godsend for this team who just needed center backs in the worst way.
I think, the dude's feeling himself right now. And I also think he has the mentality of just, like, this is the last chance he has on the world stage, really. I mean, the dude's going to be 39 in the next World Cup. In my opinion, you add him to the coaching staff at that point. And
how old is Pepe for Portugal?
He is 39.
Yeah.
But no, I think he knows that this is probably his last dance, and he's going down swinging. He has there was a moment in the England game where he built out of the back kind of by himself. He took the ball and he wound up past the halfway line. It was like, okay, Tim Ream, if you're feeling yourself, you're feeling yourself. But also he just brings so much great leadership, especially in his communication. I think he's really been the communicator, which was a job that was Walker Zimmerman's beforehand. He really is out there barking out orders. The one that really sticks in my head is when he played a great through ball to Christian, and he just yelled, "Turn!" and it led to a great U.S. counterattack. So you can't take him off the pitch. I think he has just really taken his moment and ran with it. He's not missing his shot.
He arrived on the scene at the nick of time, and as Spicy Pineapple says, if it ain't for Ream, we aren't where we are, which damn well might be true, because outside of Ream, the center back options for the U.S. were dire, and he stepped up in an incredible way. Now, let's move up to the midfield, because this is a section of the field where a lot of people are calling for changes ahead of this Iran game, a game where we're expected to have I like that. Robert says, "Dear Tim Ream, I apologize for everything negative I've ever said about you." I think there's a lot of us who are quietly deleting our Tim Ream receipts right now. He's been that good for the U.S. Now, this midfield is something that a lot of people are discussing right now. In a game against Iran, we're expecting the U.S. to have the majority of the ball. We're expecting for Iran to sit back and play against the ball. A lot of people are saying the MMA midfield has been phenomenal. They controlled the game against Wales. They bossed the game against an England midfield that has some of the most expensive midfielders in the world playing for their team. Incredible job in that game. But we get to this Iran game, and people are questioning, the weakness of the MMA midfield is a lack of creativity. We know that that's not the strong suit in the final third for Yunus Musa, for Weston McKennie. Is this a moment where you drop one of those guys, potentially bring in Brendan Aronson or Gio Reyna to add a more attacking player that can break down this Iran back line, which we expect to be dug in throughout this game?
No, I don't think you mess with it. I think it was such a bright spot in that England game. I mean, that England midfield is so highly touted. I mean, I think they're worth probably 250 million pounds if you go by Transfer Market's assessment. I just, we talk about Tyler Adams off the pitch. You got to talk about him on the pitch. The dude was everywhere, and you did not hear a peep out of Jude Bellingham or Mason Mount or Declan Rice. There was a great meme going around. I think Troll Football put it out where it was, I think it was Stone Cold Steve Austin had 3 different dudes in a headlock, and it said Tyler Adams, Mount, Bellingham, and Rice, and a few of the players actually liked it, which I thought was awesome. But he is everywhere for us, and the one question mark about him was, can he be good on the ball? And he's proven that he is good on the ball, and he is calm, cool, and collected. And Yunus Musa, I don't think we talked enough about him. He absolutely was phenomenal and good in recovery and good in the build up. And then Weston was starting to feel himself. I understand the urge to put it, because if you're taking one out, you're probably taking out Weston. But he was so good in that last game and was just saucing dudes. I don't see how you take him out. I don't see I just do not see Greg changing it up last minute. I think it would be foolish of him to get cold feet and get jittery and overthink it. That MMA midfield was great against one of the best teams in the world. And I just don't see how you can change it up right now.
I tend to agree with you. I don't like the idea of just bringing in someone else and expecting it to stay the same. From my perspective, it's like having buckets of water and you're kind of robbing water from one bucket to fill up another bucket. But if you're doing that, you're losing water in another bucket. And I think like the U.S. has been so good and it has been able to control games because of the play of the midfield. And if you start messing with that midfield, if you start taking players out and adding new players in, it's going to affect how we control those games. And, the worst case scenario in this game against Iran, as we look at it, as is giving up counterattacks and having those guys on the field who have absolutely suffocated any counterattacks, any second ball opportunities, seems like it would be advantageous for the U.S. I've seen so many interesting things lately. I saw Mason Mount recently turned down 200,000 pounds a week for Chelsea as a contract. And I think he got a shot on goal in the game. He got a very good shot on goal. But outside of that, he just did not have any impact on that game. I heard a report that Jude Bellingham might be pulled for Jordan Henderson in the next game, which kind of speaks to just how he did not make an impact in that game. I mean, Declan Rice, the whole thing was about taking Declan Rice out, and they absolutely did. And England just had no answers, man. Crazy. Bailey Marshall says Yunus Musa to Inter Milan next. Inter Milan next season.
You definitely don't want to be going to Juve with what's going on there right now.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if the team sheet comes out and I see potentially Brendan Aronson on for Weston McKennie, as I saw somebody suggest in the chat earlier, it's not the worst thing in the world for me. I think that that's still a very strong lineup, and one of the downsides of this tournament so far is like Brendan Aronson hasn't had his opportunities really to impact these games, and I think that he has the talent to do so. And the substitutions have been a big story throughout these games and how late they've come. So it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to me, but I do think that you stick with the MMA midfield. But that brings us to the front line, which is another really interesting discussion. I think we both have Christian Pulisic starting at the left wing. Now, I don't know if enough is being said about Christian Pulisic with the amount of minutes that he's logging in this World Cup and the effort that he's been giving. He's been phenomenal throughout the World Cup. I mean, there's moments where his decision-making could have been better and he could have done more with some opportunities, but I think we've gotten the Christian Pulisic that we needed in this World Cup so far. I think he's been very good. But the striker situation is still a problem. I don't know that we've got a whole lot from Josh Sargent in the first game. I don't know that we got a whole lot from Haji Wright in the second game. Is this a game where you start Jesus Ferreira because he offers you so much in the combination play and the build-up? He gives you an opportunity to potentially build through the middle. Or do you like the strength of Josh Sargent, maybe the counter-attacking runs of Haji Wright? Or do you go with the other option, which Greg Berhalter sort of addressed at the press conference today and said it wasn't going to happen, with having someone like Gio or Brendan or Tim Weah or somebody else play striker?
I would beg and plead, Greg, for Tim Weah at the 9, but I wouldn't go with Haji Wright because I don't think we're going to be playing on the counter a lot. I think Josh Sargent, his strength would be an asset. But also I think in this game, you might have to have someone be able to get their own shot and have a lot of off the ball movement. I think Jesus could be that guy. And time to see if Jesus can be our savior.
Right on time. 97 Pensacola with a $2 donation says, time to see if Jesus can be our savior. And, it's been interesting. A big storyline coming in was, Jesus Ferreira had gotten so many minutes at the 9 position coming into the World Cup for the U.S. men's national team. He gets the number 9 jersey for the U.S. men's national team. So everybody expected that it would be Jesus' tournament. We get the report out of that Arsenal is looking at Jesus and Bayern Munich is looking at Jesus, and they want to see what kind of World Cup he's going to have. And so far, we've gotten 0 minutes for Jesus Ferreira. So is this the moment where he comes in and potentially rights all those wrongs of all those missed shots that he had leading up to this?
Possibly. I mean, from your lips to God's ears, man. I mean, the only thing that I could see Greg not going with Jesus is that if he doesn't want to shift things up too much. I mean, to be fair, you've had a pretty good tournament so far. You had one boneheaded mistake that cost you 2 points against Wales, but that wasn't the striker's fault. So, and then you go out and get a really nice tie where you had a lot of the game in your hands against a world-class opponent. So I don't know if Greg really wants to mess with a lot right now. But that being said, when you're going to be playing against a team that's really sitting back, you might need someone to be able to be a little bit more creative, or rather than playing in transition or just being strong and good in the air. And I think if he changes it from Haji or Josh, I think we're not going to see any of the creative options. I think we're going to see Jesus Ferreira.
Now let's move on to the right wing. This is a position where Tim Weah, I think, has just been one of the unsung heroes of this squad. He gets the goal against Wales, but he seems like he's involved in just absolutely everything good that happens for this national team. And I think the biggest advertisement for Tim Weah as a starter for this national team was the 2 games in September where he was not in the squad, and this team just struggled to move the ball at all against Saudi Arabia or Japan. Now, with Gio Reyna looming, I don't know about his health situation or what all's going on there. There's a lot of other things that people saying other things about Gio Reyna potentially, or Brendan Aronson kind of waiting in the wings. Is this the game where you change things up and bring somebody else in, or do you keep riding with Weah?
You ride with Weah, but I think you put him, unless things are just going phenomenally and he is just going out of his mind, I think you have to take him off earlier in the game because we often forget that he is one of those guys that has been coming off an injury. And I don't know if he actually has 90 strong minutes in his legs. We saw him kind of peter off towards the 50, 60th minute a little bit in the last game. So I would bring on Gio or Brendan a lot earlier, but I would absolutely have Weah out there.
Yeah, I mean, I see Liberty here says Weah, he did get the goal, but he's not been particularly present on the pitch. I would disagree with that a lot. I think whenever you look at a lot of the U.S.'s success in both games came down that right flank. A lot of it is due to Tim Weah either carrying the ball himself or moving players out of the way with his movement, where he is phenomenal at movement. I think we saw that on his goal where he ran into space behind the center back. And he does so many little things that I don't notice on first watch, but whenever I watch the games over again, you see that like there are moments whenever a ball's fired into Tim Weah's feet that a lot of players would fumble. Tim Weah has a way of just gracefully moving it in and out of his feet. He makes really good decisions in the final third. He makes really nice subtle passes. He's responsible for a lot of through balls, and he's really responsible as one of the big outlets for how the U.S. gets down the field, because the right flank has been Tim Weah's throughout this tournament. So I do disagree that he hasn't been particularly present on the pitch. I think he's been a massive presence on the pitch for the U.S., although I will concede that, as you said earlier, it seems like he's got about 55 to 60 minutes in him right now, because after that, it seems like he doesn't have much gas left in the tank. But to be fair, that can be said about a lot of the U.S. players that we've seen so far.
Absolutely. I see a comment from Ashton here. Des needs to play all 90 minutes. I think he's another guy that might not, even though he was fuming when he was pulled off, I absolutely would have put Joe Scally on rather than Shaq Moore, but that's neither here nor there. I think Sergiño Dest is another guy that I don't think can give you 90 minutes. Same with Weston McKennie. So I think we have some interesting options to be able to throw
Yeah,
on.
and Moose is another one that's just kind of always been a player that doesn't seem like he can go for 90, and that I think that's includes his club as well. So he's another one that tends to get
Yeah.
subbed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have enough options on the bench, especially if we're needing a goal, that we can absolutely throw some guys on there probably earlier. And I think you should get them on a little bit earlier so they have a chance to settle into the game a little bit and not just have their first touch have to be perfect because they might not get another opportunity. You need to get these guys at least a few minutes to settle into the game.
So let's talk about substitutions. We just went through I don't know if it's ideal lineup, but what you suspect that Greg Berhalter would do, which is pretty much the same as mine at this point. It's basically the same lineup we've been seeing, except Jesus Ferreira in there at the striker position. How do we approach the substitutions in this game? It's been an issue that a lot of people have complained about in the last game. I know it seemed like Brendan Aronson was standing on that sideline for an eternity waiting for the ball to go out of bounds. I think he was standing there for 10 minutes.
He was.
So I think it did throw off the timing of the substitutions. But aside from getting these subs in earlier, who are the players that you're bringing off the bench to make an impact?
Brendan Aronson for Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna for Timothy Weah, and Joe Scally for Sergiño Dest. If we are needing a goal and Yunus Musa looks winded, I throw on Cal Acosta if we're hoping for set pieces.
And set pieces have just been such an issue in this tournament and for this team over the long run. It's been pointed out that the U.S. really only has two attacking options on set pieces whenever we're going with the lineup that we've been going with, and it's Walker Zimmerman and it's Weston McKennie. The issue has been getting these players the ball, and I think in the game against England, I think Christian Pulisic's set pieces were a little bit better, but the timing wasn't quite right. And Harry Maguire had a hell of a game, especially on set pieces. I think he won every single set piece. It felt like that, at least.
He absolutely saved a goal on one of those corners because Walker Zimmerman had nobody on him, and it just took a flick off of Harry Maguire's head.
Yeah,
if it doesn't take that flick, that ball's in the back of the net.
Yeah, it's funny with all the crap that Harry Maguire was getting from American fans coming into that game. He ends up probably being the man of the match for England, with phenomenal defending, not just on set pieces but across the field, and his ability to. He was one of the few players solving problems against the U.S.'s defensive block. So he had a hell of a game, man.
Yeah.
So how? I do want to address the Gio Reyna situation. I saw somebody brought it up earlier. So just to I think give some context. Gio Reyna, of course, comes into the tournament with injury history. I think is a simple way to say it. I mean, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury for like the last year and a half. This includes whenever he returned to the team for World Cup qualifying and injured it again. And then he returned to the team in the last round of World Cup qualifying and injured it again. And then he returned to the team in September for the games against Saudi Arabia and Japan, and he injured it again. And then he went back to Dortmund and he put together a stretch of games, and now he's back at the World Cup. There's been reports that he had experienced some tightness. So it's potentially he could be injured again. Greg Berhalter has come out and said that he's 100% and that all the players are 100% and ready to go. Gio Reyna himself has said that he's 100%. Then a report, or I wouldn't say a report, I would say a comment came out where former U.S. men's national team striker Eric Winalda was on a Spaces with, and I can't remember whose Spaces he was on, but he was on a Twitter Spaces where he said that he had been talking to Claudio Reyna, Gio's father, about Gio, saying that there was an internal issue between Berhalter and Gio, that Gio's fine, that Greg asked Gio to lie about it in the press conference, but Gio refused, and that created more of a conflict between the two. And that was the issue. But then after that, Gio gets 10 minutes at the end of the England game, or was it 10 minutes?
It was 10 plus stoppage.
Yeah, it's 10 plus stoppage. So I mean, thoughts on Gio Reyna and thoughts on kind of the whole story that's kind of unfolded surrounding Gio Reyna.
Well, the report, the comment, let's call it, was coming from Eric Winalda, who kind of has made his name off of hot takes, shall we say, but this one seemed a little too specific to really be considered a hot take. But that being said, I think they're two. I mean, Greg's a grown man. This Gio's 19 years old. I mean, I don't know how you can go into basically an elimination game and not bury the hatchet. I think you can't have time for beef right now. You got to let bygones be bygones. And as much as Gio may hate it, he's got to trust Greg and he's got to ride with Greg. I mean, it may suck to sit on the bench while you feel like you could be helping the team out there on the pitch. And I see a comment saying Chuck Wagon, they're referring to Charlie Davies is convinced Gio isn't healthy. I think that's neither here nor there. I think there's no time for silliness in the locker room right now. You're in an elimination game. Fortunately or unfortunately, you got to listen to Greg at this point, and you just got to go with it.
Yeah, I think Charlie Davies' point was that Gio probably thinks that he's healthy, but he may not necessarily be healthy, which is something that athletes can kind of go through in big tournaments like this. They can kind of convince themselves that they're healthy, where the doctors might disagree with that. And we know that these players are tested regularly and they wear the straps and all that. So the analytics on their actual movements and the way that they play is something that is readily available. And I also understand, just being a human being in this world, that there have been times in my life for sure where I've been upset about a situation and I've vented to my parents about it. And I may have presented myself and the situation in a way that may get a little bit more empathy for me than might actually exist. And like through that venting, that's a way that I talk about it. And of course, there have been moments where I may have said some things to my parents, and my parents, being emotional people as well, heard different things than I may have actually said. And you wonder, whenever it gets into this telephone game where it's one person repeating something that the dad heard from the son, who's talking about a conversation, where like you get down this chain and all of a sudden like there's strife in the locker room and there's issues and all this, where it may not have actually started there. And I do wonder if that's kind of what's going on with this, because all the actions that we've seen so far, at least for me, from my perspective, where Gio Reyna under Greg Berhalter has played just about every minute he's been available to play since his first cap. I mean, his first cap at 17 years old, he came on and started in a friendly, which is a bit unusual. But Gio got that opportunity. Remember, Claudio Reyna and Greg Berhalter are like close friends that I believe did they go to the same high school or something? Like they came up.
I know they played on the national team together.
Yeah, they have a long history together, so it's a bit odd that there would be like this strife kind of this late in the game. But it considering that Gio Reyna is a player that has been injured before and injured with the same injury and has these issues where he's come into camp feeling like he's healthy and just not been able to play. I mean, we all saw that with our own eyes in September. It's not the craziest thing in the world to assume that something similar like that happened in this tournament. And we're seeing that reflected where Gio doesn't get any minutes against Wales. He gets a few minutes against England. Maybe he's lined up to get more minutes here. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think at this point, we just got to see what happens. I think what Gio might have been saying is that he felt like he deserved more minutes. He was healthy enough to play in the game, at least give him a half hour. Right? Maybe it was taken out of context where someone thought he was saying, "Oh, I'm healthy enough to start," rather than "I'm healthy enough to get 30 minutes." So I don't know. That's my thought.
I don't know. It's one of these things where you're trying to decipher like fourth party repeated. Like I don't know. You don't know. I mean, it's hard to like really make an accurate statement about this. Maybe years later, when somebody
When the
puts out a
documentary comes out about this, when the
yeah,
30
yeah,
for 30.
exactly.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's not American Fiasco. Hopefully, it's a much
Yeah.
better, more positive thing. But I guess I'm seeing a lot of comments about this in the comment section. There's people kind of all over the place on this. So, yeah, I mean, we don't know. We're probably not gonna know. The only evidence we're gonna get is like whether or not Gio gets minutes in this next game and how many minutes he gets, because we all know the quality of player that he is, that he's a player
Yeah.
that can absolutely impact this game.
Yeah. So I think S27 with a comment here. What are we saving Gio for? This is literally the World Cup. You're saving him for this. You're saving him for basically a single elimination game, which I think the proof will be in the pudding there. I think, you know, if this is some gamesmanship from Greg, giving him an extra week or so to get healthy, get treatment,
Yeah.
and you're saving him for this game, you're saving him for a game where it's do or die, then I think we could actually be tipping our hats to Greg at the end of this, if that is the case.
We don't know. I know that hamstrings is one of those injuries where if he tweaks his hamstring in the first game against Wales, he might be out for a while. Like we might lose him for the rest of the World Cup. So it's worth it to play it safe if you're expecting to be moving on later in the tournament. It's not an injury like I'm assuming whatever injury Weston McKennie is dealing with is one that he can play through. You can't play through hamstrings. Like if they go, they go, and you're not going to get them back. You just have to rest them. So it's a delicate situation. And do you understand why Borussia Dortmund has just been so delicate and bringing him back so slowly? And there's been moments where let's see, what I'm seeing Mike Irish here say, Ronaldo apologized for his comment. He said he didn't express himself right, which could be Claudio Reyna calling him on the phone going, what are you doing? Why? Because and that's one of the things that really like I was thinking about from this perspective of like, even if it's 100% true, why are you saying it? Like what help is it going to do to like bring this to the media, to like bring this to the attention of the fan base? It does not seem like a thing that just keep it to yourself, even if it is true, even if like Claudio confided in you this information, why are you bringing it to the public? It doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. I don't think Claudio, if he's talking to a friend, would have preferenced something with off the record, Eric.
Yeah. I mean, I think we don't need any extra distractions in the World Cup. And like Eric Ronaldo of all people, who experienced the 1998 World Cup and kind of all that was, and considering like listening to the American Fiasco podcast and understanding all the issues that were going on in that locker room and how that locker room kind of fell apart, to make these comments about this team, which I don't understand why he would do it, what motivation he has. But anyway, I think we need to, this has been a show where like we've talked about the least amount of soccer heading into a soccer game. And that's a frustrating thing because, soccer is what we all care about. We don't really care about all this other crap, but here we are. All right. So we got a game tomorrow. We're going to do a live stream before the game and we'll do one after the game, but let's give some predictions right now in chat. Put your predictions in the chat. Let me know what you think the score will be and who do you think scores. Brad, how do you think this game will go? Do you think the U.S. ends up getting the 3 points? How do you think it plays out?
All righty. So I talked about this a little bit off the top. I'm grabbing the microphone so I'm serious.
Oh, your voice is getting deep all of a sudden. Oh, man.
Yes. 3-1 U.S. I think we get 2 in the first half. And then I think Iran get a quick one into the second half, and they're going to be throwing absolutely everything forward. And I think in the waning moments, I think we get one on the counter, and it puts it to bed.
I mean, I hope that doesn't happen just for my state of being. I hope it's like a big hairy Jake. I mean, a man after my own heart right here says 3-0 USA. Pulisic did it last time against Panama when it was do or die. And we'll do it again. I don't know if this Panama team is quite up to par with this Iranian side.
And that Panama team was out of it and had nothing to play for.
Yeah. Bring your mic a little bit closer. You're too far away now. Kicking Balls FC says 2-0 USA. Jesus and Pulisic. A lot of folks are predicting Jesus. I saw the Vegas odds have Jesus as the most likely to score first in this game, which Vegas assumes that Jesus is going to score. I think it makes a lot of sense, but we'll see. Greg has surprised us in the past. I like David Ferguson here says Pulisic, Jesus, and Reyna all score in that order. That would be nice. Spicy pineapple with a dos acero, which would
love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh boy, Reyna 4-0 from David Ferguson. Reyna scores twice.
With a brace. Okay.
Let's see. Ray C says either 3-0 US and we score 2 early goals, or 0-0 if we don't score in the first half. Greg will not make adjustments, and he's going to play long no matter what at some point because he's his friend. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. That is a wildly depressing prediction from you, my friend. I'm trying to click on Sam Johnson here. Iran 4, USA 1.
I mean, if that happens at that point, can we?
Do we have a Canadian in the chat? Is that what's going on right now?
Oh God.
Oh man. And let's end it here with the Deep Hauser says, I don't think we give up a goal. It took a fluke penalty for someone to score on us. And that's really been the story of the U.S. under Greg Berhalter through the last few years. The U.S. just hasn't given up a lot of goals. We've seen that reflected in this tournament. Despite center back being such a weakness for the squad, the U.S. does not give up a lot of goals. We don't give up a lot of shots on goal for that matter. So hopefully that continues. We know that Mehdi Taremi and Sardar Azmoun are phenomenal strikers, and they have scored goals against a lot of teams. Taremi got 2 against England. One was a penalty. The other one was in the run of play. So these are 2 very lethal players, but hopefully Tyler Adams, potentially that MMA midfield, just put the clamps on, and it's not anything we need to worry about. We get a goal early. It's an absolute pleasure cruise for the U.S. as we just pile up the score. We win the game. England loses. The U.S. goes through as the top team in the group. My prediction from the YouTube video, which a lot of English and Welsh fans and Iranian fans took a lot of umbrage towards, which is, by the way, if you're going to get attacked on social media, it's so much fun to get attacked from people from different countries, especially people from Great Britain, because they come into the comment section. You could tell right away because they say, like, first of all, you lot have nothing, and it's like, listen up, mate. And it's like,
local colloquialisms.
It's so funny getting dressed down in in slang from different countries. Anyway,
in the Queen's English.
Yeah. Pleasures of being a YouTube creator. Any final words as we leave everyone? Roughly what do you have? Like it's certainly less than 24 hours. I'm not great at math off the top, but the game is coming soon. What are your final thoughts as you're going to leave us with before we all go to sleep ahead of this game?
We've got about 16 hours, and those 16 hours will not go by quick enough. My suggestion is a nice strong cocktail to help ease the time. But one of the things we've talked about is all this outside noise. And I think one of the things that U.S. soccer, for all its missteps, has done is that it's kept these guys in a close-knit group and has kept them pretty isolated from the outside. I think that they, are still feeling themselves from the England game. They're still feeling happy with each other. That camp seems to be in a great mood. And I think they're just going to go in and just play ball. I think that's the main thing. We've talked about the youth of this team. I think we've surrounded them with enough experience and enough age to where that these young guys aren't really feeling the moment too much. You got to feel the moment to some extent, but I think they're going to go out there. They're going to play ball. They're going to let their feet do the talking, and I'm excited. I'm ready to go, and I want to keep doing this because our viewership keeps growing every week, and that's good for us.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. Make sure you hit the like button. I just to piggyback off of your comments. I mean, one thing that I think we all knew heading into this tournament, but it has really revealed itself is the character for this team is just off the charts, and I think we saw that in a major way with Tyler Adams today, and the way that he carried himself, and the way that he was just so poised and eloquent in his comments in a incredibly adverse situation in that press conference. And it's a joy to see these guys play. I hope we get to see him in the next round. I hope America gets to see these guys continue to play because I think that they are a fantastic representation of who we are as a nation. And just I hope America continues to get to see these guys in their living room, finds out more about them, finds out more about where they play and how they can see them more regularly, how they can get involved in soccer and just grow this thing, because we've got some phenomenal representatives of this sport and this nation out there for this squad.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely.
It's going to be a rough night. I'm probably going to take like a Benadryl or something like that in order to get some sleep. I had to do that the night before the Wales game, and it was effective. I mean, against the day of the Wales game, I woke up and I must have swept my floor for like 2 hours. I washed every dish, washed the linens, just all the busy work I could possibly do until 1 o'clock. I'm going to do absolutely no work tomorrow. That's for damn sure.
I'm just fortunately, actually, one of my bosses scheduled a call during the game, and I was like, dude, no. So I'm going to have that call in the morning, and then I think I'm just going to go to like 2 back-to-back spin classes just to have such a distraction.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. I hope that you are able to kill the hours until tomorrow. We will be here for pregame coverage, and then we will be here after the game for the celebration stream where we talk about how the U.S. is going on to the next round, to the knockout rounds of the World
Good vibes.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out. On behalf of Brad, my name is Sam. This is the Yank Report, brought to you guys by Bet Online. Thank you so much.